Namaste, and welcome to another podcast on the Amazing Veda with Dr. Pariksith Singh. Sir, we are going to continue our discussion on Sarasvati, which is such an important topic because it links us with our very ancient past. And
Yes.
you remember in our last discussion, I referred to this extraordinary book by Dr. Prema Nandakumar. It's called Mahasaraswati, the Perennial Spiritual Stream. I recommend it to our audience, though I didn't find it on the internet either. I had an old copy. It's a very small book, only 80 pages. But what she does, which is extraordinary, and I'm going to lead up to my first question to you, is she sees the flow of Saraswati from the Vedic times to the present, a perennial flow. Though ironically, the river is supposed to have vanished. So we'll come back to that in a moment. But the argument she makes is that Saraswati is not only the goddess of learning, of music and speech, and a very important goddess, as we saw last time in the Rig Veda. She's Vak and Paravak, the goddess of, language itself, of the higher language of illumination and of consciousness. But she's also a river. Now, the point is that what Premaji does is then she traces the evolution of the idea of Saraswati from the Vedas through the Mahabharata, Ramayana, the Puranas, through Kalidasa as well, and brings it to the contemporary times by linking, Saraswati of the Vedas to Mahasaraswati that Sri Aurobindo talks about in the Mother. So, today we are going to talk about this tremendously important goddess who is also a river and whom, today Indians worship. We said it in our last podcast. We have Saraswati Puja on Vasanta Panchami. We trace the first letters sometimes in a tray which has rice in it or sand. So when people say that Indian civilization is not continuous, here's a proof that it is. An ancient Vedic goddess, referred to 5,000 years ago or 4,500 years ago and worshipped to this day. So let me ask you this. Let me start by asking you, Dr. Singh, what is the relationship in the Veda, between Saraswati, the goddess that we've already talked about, and Saraswati, the river?
It's a very interesting connection. And see, in the Veda, there are external elements and then their inner suggestiveness, the mystical connection, the spiritual bridge, as it were, to something else that is within us. The beauty of the Veda is the external is not separate from the internal. So often this whole focus that some interpreters and pretty significant interpreters, which was the Purva Mimamsa, the Mimamsaks took that it was all ritual, don't worry about the meaning, just focus on the sound, or the Western interpreters, at least the earlier ones, they saw it only as external. The interesting thing is, in the Veda, there is no such thing as just external, because the external is internal, is complete. The completeness of our existence is both. And if you master the internal, you master the external. In fact, Sri Aurobindo describes this beautifully, that the original Veda was a way to master our surroundings through mastering the internal, the inner movements. And this whole elaborate yajna that is described is actually a description of the inner energies, how you arrange them, how to organize them, and how you concentrate them and use them. It's very beautiful. So whenever we say, visit an external river, I do not know, because I wasn't there. Maybe I was, but I can't remember it. But it doesn't matter. Even if it was there, and it seems like there was an external river, there are some historical connections people have found. Maybe it inspired them. a great river like Ganges um, inspires you to spiritual realizations. A river being next to a body of water is a very is an experience that transforms us to another uh, kind of perhaps an inner world where we connect to that expansion, that flow. But whether there was a geographic river or not, an external river or not, um, we can never be too sure of unless we have proper, archaeological evidence for it. And how would we know what was the river that was named Saraswati? There was no, it wasn't written on it. How would you know? But something inspired them, which is quite appropriate because Saraswati is the goddess of inspiration. And that flow, that energy, that white energy. And often you will see external terms used for some internal phenomena. Agni, Vayu, external elements. Water is a symbol of being, right? Fire is a symbol of consciousness or divinity. Bhumi is the principle, the earth is a principle of your external, the body. The sky is a principle of your consciousness, and we use it very often. Uh, the uh, the consciousness that has become space, Chidakasha, we use it often. So the external river is beautifully internalized and used as a symbol of our inner transformation. And that is what great poets do. Even Eliot, you will see, or Mallarmé, great poets will take an external. Thames, River Thames becomes uh, a great symbol in the wasteland, I believe. Sweet river, sing softly. What was the line? And
Yes.
all the. So it's a very powerful symbol. It's in the four quartets. You will see water becomes itself a powerful symbol. So I believe Saraswati, whether there was a river or not, has been beautifully used as a symbol that is still alive today, and that symbol kind of transposes on an external, internal worldview that sees them part of the same completeness. I don't know if I answered your question, but that's
Yes,
how
you,
I.
you, you did. You did. You answered it in one part and you dodged it in another part, which is to say, which is to say that yes, we don't exactly know where the Saraswati was. Some people identified with the Ghaggar. Some people say it was a river going down to the Gujarat, going into the Arabian Sea and so forth. But a very good book on this, as you know yourself too, because we've talked about this, is Michel Danino's book, The Lost
Yes,
River, on the
yes,
trail of the Saraswati, where he's shown tremendous evidence that such a river actually existed. And in the Rig Veda, there's so much evidence. We talked a little bit a while back, a little bit, about the importance of the Gayatri mantra, and we know that Vishwamitra, you know, got this mantra right on the banks of Saraswati when he was actually figuring out a way to beat Vashishta. So we'll come back to that. That's why I said you've answered it partly. I'll tell you how I think you've answered it. You've said that everything external is also something internal.
yes,
So the goddess that is Saraswati is obviously something, whatever external in the sense it's a river, but it's definitely the perennial flow of the paravak or the consciousness within us, for sure. But here's where I think things will get really interesting, in my opinion, when we contrast Saraswati with Indus, but Sindhu. But we'll come to that in the next episode. Right now, I want to go back to something you've said in the Veda Made Simple, and which also, of course, links up with Sri Aurobindo, which is, how the Vedas and the symbology, and I guess you're an expert on symbology now, in our midst, because you really unpacked it in a very interesting way, at least to me, as a student and scholar and teacher. So it seems to me that the argument is that Vedic symbolism and the deeper meanings of the deities permeate all through not only Indic civilization but beyond. So let's just once again, I would refer back to again Premaji's book, where, not only does she trace Saraswati through the Vedas, the Puranas, and talk about the references to Saraswati in the other Vedas, in the Yajur Veda, in the Atharva Veda, and of course in the great Saraswati Suktam, where Saraswati is identified with Vak. And last time we saw how in Kashmir Shaivism, the great goddess Paravak is actually one of the most important deities. So, but here's the point that I wanted to refer to you and back to your book, The Veda Made Simple. What is amazing is Saraswati appears in Jainism as Vagdevi, as Vagishwari. She appears in Buddhism as Pragya. She appears in Pali texts. She appears in Tamil texts. So she becomes not only a pan-Indian symbol of knowledge, illumination, spiritual aspiration, but Saraswati is found all the way in Kyoto. She's in China. She's in Vietnam. So in this great sort of what we used to call Indo-China, the spread of Indic civilization, in all its, diversity and glory towards the east, of course, in China, right up to Japan, right down to Philippines, where Sanskrit was used for some time. And then in the west, I'm convinced that there was Saraswati in Afghanistan and beyond, where Khorasan, in the areas where Buddhism spread, before the invasion of Islam and so forth, and who knows, maybe beyond. So can you please talk about how Saraswati, even if the river disappeared, which I think we know it did, because there was a cataclysm, a geographical shift towards the Indus and then beyond to the Ganges. So let's leave out the physical river for the time being. We'll come back to it in the next episode. But as a symbol, how Saraswati is, spreads all over. So can you please comment on this enormous spread of Saraswati as a symbol, even though the real river, actually disappears?
So let me just add, and I dodged your bouncer when you threw it at me like an expert, opener in cricket, because it is a very controversial subject. When we were growing up, and maybe it's just mythology in my head, we were told that the Sangam of Yamuna and Ganga was not two rivers; it was three rivers: Ganga, Yamuna, Saraswati. They called it Triveni. Now, I do not know if it's just we heard this, if there is some geographic evidence to it. And then I read another interpretation that, remember, these are just the external forms. Ganga represents one aspect of our life, Yamuna represent another. And Saraswati is not there physically. She is a conceptual river that is the third part of our life that comes and joins them.
Oh,
I do not know.
absolutely. By the way, no, it's very profound what you said. In fact, it illustrates or re-emphasizes or proves or reinforces the idea that though the physical river disappeared long ago, it
Right.
remained in the consciousness
Yes.
as a subterranean flow
Yes.
of, the higher consciousness. So, it's so interesting. I've written about this myself, that there is a tantric interpretation, which is Ganga and Yamuna are Ida and Pingala. But
Yes.
Shushumna, that nadi which takes us to the Sahasrara, is the
Yes.
hidden flow of
Yes.
Saraswati. Now, how did it reach Allahabad? Very good question. Now, there are two or three interpretations. One is that a tributary reached that Sangam. But because the real river was farther east, as we know, and we have archaeological evidence of it, there are satellite images. It was a massive river at one time. So it's like a kind of, scar on the face of the earth, if not scar, a huge mark.
Beauty spot.
But yeah, exactly, beauty spot, if you will. Thank you. But so when the Mughals, etc., were ruling India, they believed that secret knowledge that was, the perennial knowledge of the Vedas, which had got submerged, was still available. And why Allahabad? Because there it appeared in the form of a well. So in other words, if you dig deeper down within yourself, right, you'll find So it's a very beautiful symbolism, as you said. So we'll come back to these rivers and why they're so important. In fact, we are told that India is a riverine, civilization. But I wanted to ask you one more point, and then we'll
Yes.
end this episode, which is again referring to Premaji and bringing us up to Sri Aurobindo, our guru, when it comes to understanding not just the Vedas but a lot else. Mahasaraswati, amazing concept in the mother, the fourfold powers of the divine mother. And Mahasaraswati refers to perfection. So can you please, as a fellow sadhak and student and Guru Bhai of Sri Aurobindo, please can you tell us a little more about Mahasaraswati in Sri Aurobindo's conception? Because you've already written a book on Sri Aurobindo as well.
So Mahasaraswati is the aspect of the divine feminine in microscopic, in the smallest things, in perfection, in skill. When you talk about Maheshwari, she's the one who creates galaxies and massive, supernovas and universes are created. When we come to Saraswati, she's into the small, the quantum, the quarks and perfection at the smallest level, at the cellular level, how the mitochondrion works with the Golgi bodies and how each chemical reaction happens that keeps this body alive and keeps this mind and prana, everything perfectly synchronized to such an atomic excellence. And that is what we students, writers, craftsmen, people who do sculpture, people who are in arts, we want to have that skill in what we do, follow that perfection, and we aspire to invoke that perfection in us. And that's really how we would worship the pen. We would worship in the sense we would honor it, to invoke that power in our pen or in our little tools or toolbox. And by the way, remember, Sri Aurobindo pointed out that the river Hippocrene in the Greek mythology also comes as a river of inspiration, through which is broken through the stone by the power of the horse called Pegasus, which through the power of its paws hits the ground and the river comes out. And again, see the symbolism coming through the rock, the Adri coming out through the Pajas, the Ashva with the power, the horse with the power brings out the inspiration. Beautiful symbolism and connects us.
That's so beautiful because, Hippocrene reminds us of Keats, and also Pegasus represents afflatus,
Yes.
inspiration.
Yes.
It's a winged horse.
Horse with wings.
So with wings. So this is the point, that we are trying to link this goddess of the Vedas, the Rig Veda, with the physical river, which was really important to the Vedic sages and seers who received or who envisioned these great mantras, and the symbol of the higher consciousness of wisdom, pragya, continues to this time. And what you said, invoking and referring to Sri Aurobindo, perfection in the smallest details of life. How we have been talking about Vedas for Gen Z, not only X, Y, but Z, and how even young people need to imbibe or need to absorb that sense of trying to be excellent in what they do, even at the smallest level. And you very well sort of talked about the spectrum of the power of the goddess, from galaxies, from infinite, akhanda brahmanda mandala is the description in the Veda, to the quarks, to the microscopic particles. So I think that, this is a very good point at which we bring this episode on Saraswati, the goddess, the river, who's also, you might say, the perennial flow of inspiration in not just the Indic civilization, but in world civilization, right?
Yes.
To a close. So thank you, Dr. Singh. for your wonderful inputs. If you have any concluding thoughts, we will end with those.
No, Saraswati is just one of our most beautiful depictions of the continuity through our inspiration, through the human aspiration, and then final acceptance of the divinity descending on us, coming us and pouring all its energy, all this knowledge within us. And I go into an epileptic fit whenever I read the third mandala, the first mandala, the third suktam. The last three verses are absolutely gorgeous. So maybe next time we will discuss them.
Thank you. On that note, thank you so much. Please like, share, and subscribe to our channel, and follow us on X, Amazing Vedas. You're all welcome. It's a feast to which everyone is invited. Thank you.